Oh, it's not fancy.
Okay. My chart there for where our taxes go. We're gonna get a read of how much.
Right, and I think it was at one meeting where I said something, and one of them was, one Steve Sheep, that, not that we don't spend money efficiently. That more, that it's. For the. Don't have that much money, and why we, and I'd be. So much money. Because we're. You know what I'm saying? The water, I mean, the water fund. Money we spend because they don't have a guy who goes every summer, it'll pay for the bell, if they get fire hydrant, or they break it. And then we, rather than spending whatever for a part-time guy to do that, or a third public works guy, we're spending 10 grand, 15 grand to price the bell. And then price.
How about right now? I think you know me. Afraid of that one. Something out there. I mean, bottom line is, I'm doing it only for everybody. I'm not doing it for myself, for everybody else. But, you know, we can be on. And that's what we're going to
7:31.
7:30, plugging in my computer right now.
I got 7:30 and I got 7:31.
All right, it's 7:30, let's call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
roll call, please. Mr. Nimitz.
Here.
Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Thorne.
Here.
Mr. Harney. Here. Mr. Datley.
Here.
Mr. Carino.
Here.
We have a quorum, we have a meeting. The governor signed the extension of the gubernatorial proclamation extending the remote access availability until the 12th of November. However, we have a full board. We will not need the remote attendance this evening unless the engineer or the public works is attending remote. They are not. Okay, we've got everybody in place this evening. There will be no roll call votes unless required by state statutes, i.e. ordinances, etc. Okay, minutes. We have a motion to approve the minutes of October 3rd, 2022.
Second Thorne.
Moved by Diatley, seconded by Thorne. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? There being no opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen. The next item, the president's report. One of the quick items, I just did receive the police report on the application for liquor license for the service club for Saturday, the 29th. From 3 till 6 or 7, I believe the license was. That's been checked out, so I will be signing that and giving that to the service club for their Halloween special. The only thing I did not know, was there a rain date on that? No rain date?
Sunday.
Sunday, the 30th, okay. All right, that's the one thing I had to know. Other than that, I don't think they've got anything else this evening. Clerk's report.
The only report I have for tonight, or actually the report I have for tonight is notice of the 2023 consolidated election. For those people that are interested in seeking a position on the Board of Trustees, there are 3 positions that are available for a 4-year term and 1 is for a 2-year term. You can obtain a copy of the 2023 candidate selection guide. You can see that on our website. But you can also get all of the material that you need and the rules, regulations, forms, etc. by going to elections.state.il.us. All the forms are available there, including a calendar that tells you exactly what you need to do and when to do it. And what we're doing in the village is we're going to put together a packet of material. It's much more of a general information packet. By all means, rely on what you find at the state website as opposed to what you find at the village website. But that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Planning and zoning, no report. Okay. Attorney, no report. Engineer, update on the street program. Engineer's not here. Ms. Detmer, I just called P and Z. Did you have anything for P and Z?
No, they're just continuing on with looking at revisions and making progress.
Okay, look. All right. Thank you. The engineer. Give us an update.
Yeah, he gives a single page written.
Yeah.
Right after the minutes, I think.
Yeah. Here's the-
Okay. I'm gonna say they were to begin the week of the 17th, which is today. And take 3 to 4 days. And then finish up. However, with the call for the freezing weather, I'm not sure what the availability of asphalt is for the next couple of days. So I don't think they started working today. So I'll have to watch that and see. We're close to the end of the season for that. Hopefully we don't get kicked back into next year, but I don't want them putting down asphalt when it's not going to stay in place and not be done properly. So, okay, next item, Director of Finance report, Mr. Van.
A request of motion for the warrants in the amount of $115,624.24.
So moved.
Moved by Hoffman, seconded by Thorne to approve the warrants of October 17, 2022 in the amount of $115,624.24. Any additions, deletions, comments, or questions? There being none, roll call please.
Mr. Farino,
Aye.
Mr. Nimitz,
Aye.
Mr. Yadley,
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Thorne,
Aye.
Mr. Harney.
6 affirmative votes, no negative votes, the motion so passes. Gentlemen,
I just wanted to make note and have it part of the record that we were invoiced in August from ICCI that they had done extensive writing and editing of Title VI in the amount of 44 hours, which came out to be about $4,400, and they donated that time to us. So I've issued a donation in that amount. So I just wanted to publicly thank ICCI for their work and help in that.
for sure thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And my final item is that we received the draft audit from Water Economic, and I spent all day reading it. So that was a little fun, but we are meeting as a finance committee this week to go over that, and as well as some other items. We still have a little bit to go. They're planning on hopefully having the final audit for us on November 1st. And then they're planning on presenting at the November 7th board meeting. because we're getting this after October 31st, we've had to ask for an extension for the state controller's office for our filings, which we'll do at the end of the month. So we have that 60-day extension.
So, the preliminary review of the draft of the audit
We're
looks
clean.
promising.
Yep, we're clean.
I'd like to congratulate Eugene. I know we have not accepted the audit yet, but this was his first full year of the audit, and she was responsible for what was in the book. And I think we only have what, 4 journal entries.
For journal entries, which is a third of what we had last year.
So, you know, I'd like to congratulate him on getting through this issue. Now, the next big one is when you have the full trifecta, when you got the budget and
Yes.
corporations and the audit all in the same. So,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, Eugene. Okay, next item, comments from the public, Mr. English.
Evening, speaking on behalf of the Service Club again. We had a recent meeting and one of the members mentioned that when the gazebo was erected down at the park, the original intention was to be able to sit in the gazebo and look across the lake to the spillway on the other side. Well, as it is right now, there's so much vegetation between the lake and the gazebo, you can't even see the lake. So we were wondering if Public Works might be able to at least cut back the vegetation so that you could see across the lake. And the other problem we're running into is when we have our fishing derby on the 4th, it's becoming really difficult to find enough shoreline for the kids to be able to drop their lines in. So I don't know if there's something that can be done to try to open up more of the shoreline. So, and that obviously wouldn't need to be done till next July, but something that can open up more shoreline for the kids to be able to drop their lines in. Because it's, if we know the lake's not real deep, so they need to get pretty close in order not to snag things. So that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a look into that as we get closer to the 4th of July. Okay, trustee reports, roads and parks, Mr. Harney.
Last week Eugene and I, along with a Clay, Illinois representative, met to finalize a contract proposal for the 17 playground equipment and have it ready to present to the board this evening. The result of that was a final figure of just a little under $4,000 less than the original proposal. And I'll explain a little bit of what happened. Prior to that meeting, the park was re-inspected and the safety inspector concluded that no replacement was needed in the one piece of equipment for the 3 to 5 year olds. As you look at the park, it's the one piece to the left. It's a nice piece. It's the one with a roof. It's got Sleepy Hollow on it, etc. And it was agreed upon, and Kyle has agreed that he will pressure wash it. And there's a way to polish. There's big domes that are translucent. We'll try to polish those up. It should be mentioned, the color scheme for that piece of equipment is called Woodland, and it'll be just like the new equipment that we're proposing tonight, so it'll match fine. The savings from that unit were distributed in a way to make minor modifications to the main existing structure, the one that's right in the middle of the park, and the rest of the savings would be the rest of the money, if you will, would go to what we would call savings, would meet maybe unforeseen circumstances. Now, if you could, in your packet, if you could go to page 46, you'll see the actual, the proposal is in 2 contracts, one for the equipment and one for the installation. On page 46 is for the equipment only. I'm not going to go through all the figures there, but to head off maybe some questions. The first figure is for the equipment as modified today. The next figure is a discount from Omnia. That is the cooperative purchasing business, if you will, and that keeps us from having to incur the expenses of going out to bid. You see that's about 15 grand there. The additional courtesy discount was a result of our recent meeting, delivery of equipment is 3,000. So for the equipment, the final figure there is 81,512. The next page on 47 is for the Sabatino Park installation and surfacing. Including in this final proposal is putting engineered wood fiber down on the playground. The engineered wood fiber has a service life of about 8 years. We normally replace chips, every other year. So in 8 years, that'll be a few $1,000 savings to the village. Then you see installation there is a little over 39,000. So that total price is for installation and surfacing 42,558. That comes to a final figure of $124,000 and $124,070. If anyone has any questions on Omnia, how we got that discount, on page 59, it explains that company there. Let's see. That should do it. So I will go ahead and make a motion to approve the contract as proposed for both the Sabatino equipment and the installation at a cost of $124,070.
Second.
Didn't we do this 2 weeks ago? I mean, 2 meetings ago? I thought we voted on it already.
We voted on 100, that was a proposal for
For the
128,000.
20, okay.
We came under, so this is the final contract.
So we have to do it
We had
again.
we authorized him to go for a contract not to exceed 128,000.
So now we have the
Come back
actual
now.
price, so we have to
Now
do it
we-
again,
So does the
prove it.
discount count as bidding, or do we need another motion to approve waiving the putting it out to bid too? Or is
No.
it part, we're good?
No bid process is needed.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And then, did we give them or did they give us when installation might be sometime in the spring or summer? Late. I just
And
want to thank Ed for all the work he did. It's
Thank you.
awesome getting some savings.
the partners are still gonna do inspections for us monthly, or?
Yes, that continues.
Perfect. Thank you, Ed, for everything.
Sure.
It's a lot of, I know how much work that is. That's a lot of work and minutia and learning all this stuff, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is a financial commitment on the behalf of the village. So roll call. Mimic, okay.
Okay. We'll call Moreno,
Yeah, aye.
Dattley,
Aye.
Nimick,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Thorne.
Aye.
Mr. Harney.
Aye.
6 affirmative votes, no negative votes, and the motion so passes. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you, Ed.
Yeah, that's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Finance, Mr. Hoffman.
Couple of things, the one we met on Thursday of last week, with Anthony, myself, Chief, and, Code Enforcement Officer Fleck, and also Eugene, to talk about code enforcement laws, to educate me on really understanding the whole process. And in a nutshell, what I found out is they don't proactively, unless there's something blatant or flagrant, if you see something, they respond to residents' feedback. Am I correct? Incorrect with this, tell me. And it's not a monetary gain for the village. But my question still stands, and I'll still be an advocate for it though too, is we're setting a precedent with a lot of residents, homeowners, that are totally ignoring the current codes. And I, for one, don't like that. And I don't care what anybody else thinks, but if it's in the book and it's the code right now, then we need to enforce it. And there are some out there that we have enforced and we've gone and they've kind of flipped us off. And we talked about that at the last meeting. And I said, we have to make a statement, not make a statement, but pursue it. I think we need to pursue some of these. And yes, we're going to incur legal costs. I understand that. But you know, we need to go after it and say, okay, we're going to make a statement here, not a statement. We've got that on the books until it's resolved otherwise with changes to the code, which there's a lot of code work in progress. Then, you know, we'll do whatever the future says. But for now, I think that, you know, and I mean, I'm sure all of you get feedback from residents and all saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? It's almost like a broken record at times. And you say, yeah, I'll find out or I'll do something. But there's aggravation in a lot of it. So we'll see where it goes. But it was very informative meeting, a very interesting meeting. But we did lunch. So I just wanted to give some feedback with that. And then another, as you know, going through the expenses, I'll bring it up again. Just a couple of things I see, and some of it not really, some of it could relate back to code enforcement. But for example, we had one last meeting, we had an issue with a swimming pool. And it was resolved and the board voted in to provide a variance so that they could do, you know, to get it resolved. And which we were all in agreement with, or I think everybody was in agreement with. But as I go through the expenses, I find out that we've incurred $600 to $700 in legal fees over and above the permit or whatever with that. And I think you know where I stand with that as I've dug in. I mean, this is a small village. You know, I mean, we're doing pretty good based on the audit, but compared to other villages, we don't have the funding and the, you know, capability of just saying, oh, we can absorb this or whatever. So my question is, we had those legal fees, and just to give you some information, we're still working on the audit. I've seen it, Eugene's seen it, passed it to the finance committee, and it looks very good. We've done very good with it, but as you've heard me speak over the last, you know, like a broken record, the last year, as I go through expenses, I talk about legal fees, I talk about engineering fees, I talk about planning and zoning, those related to water or to ICCI or whatever, which I know are all legit. I'm not criticizing those, but I said those fees have skyrocketed this year. We've seen excessive fees skyrocket. And I mean, the audit picked some of that up, but there's no fault with it or anything. It's just journal entries. Am I correct, Eugene, with that? We just have to budget more for it going forward if that's the case. So we absorbed a lot more in expense this year than we've had in prior years, at least based on my digging in and taking a look. And here we come back to this pool situation. And we look at, I could name culverts, I could name engineering costs related to inspections of properties, where they were doing a driveway, they were doing a culvert, something like that. I know they get a permit fee, but behind the scenes, the village is incurring all kinds of engineering costs, and we're incurring all kinds of legal costs. And my question is that right? Does the village just say, oh, okay, don't worry, we'll absorb the costs? I don't think it's that is not our responsibility as a small village to incur those costs, especially when you look at some of the referendums in the past that we've tried to pass to get some taxes, a tax increase that would help offset those, and they've been shot down right at the polls. So that's my question. So I'm, you know, done with the finance, but I mean, that's what I'm putting out there, that we need to do something and we need to take action. We can't sit here and worry about it 6 months or a year from now. We got to make some kind of action. I'm not sure where we go with it though, but some of those fees I think should be incurred by the resident. And I'm not talking fees that we were talking about replacing the culvert or damaging their driveway or something like that. I'm talking legitimate ones. You know, that pool issue was not our issue. I mean, that was a resident that didn't even look at a permit or anything, decided to do it on their own. They did it wrong. They had to tear it down, then they put it back up again. Now they're in compliance and we gave them a waiver, or we gave them the okay to do it, but yet we're incurring the fees. So
Suggestion, solution,
pass it on to the resident.
pass it on to the resident.
Pass it on to the
Ms.
resident.
Detmer?
Just for folks' information, when we're working, because it's when a citizen comes in for a driveway, If there's any question as far as culvert size or issues, I do have to ask Jeff because he's the one responsible. I'm enforcing on his behalf, and the village's behalf. But when it comes to technical, decisions with regard to, the public right of way in culverts and flares, et cetera, I do oftentimes have to bring Jeff in on it. He tries to keep that at a minimum and I'm not even sure how he charges on that, but when I do know for sure he's going to be involved, like we had the retention wall replacement up on Crane. He's coming up with the amount and that citizen will be paying for that. And we try to forewarn people that they're going to be incurring engineering fees on that. And we've developed an engineering permit for those projects that will only be dealing in village right away, which are not a component of an entire driveway replacement. So Jeff and I've been trying to work together to come up with a way of tracking that, and he has to work with his finance people to get the billing in so that we can then forward it to the citizen and everything.
And then the
like that.
village will get that fee. The village will get that.
The citizen will pay the village, which will be a reimbursement for any charge or the charge that is done by engineering for whatever work on that given.
Okay, so some of the ones I just glanced at real quickly were $1,936, $514, 200, I mean,
What are you looking at? What line item?
it was on the bounce. It's in the, let me go, Well-
Which addresses? I think that would probably help.
let me see, I got some addresses here. Well, I talked about the pool. I talked about,
And
Culvert, Bull Brummel, Hilltop, Van Tussle were some of them. There were Crane, there were several others. There were a bunch of them, and I just took the dollar amounts. And they were all related to inspections of those properties by Heinz. You know, these were all, you know, Heinz inspections behind the scenes that were done. And I just figured, well, wait a minute, why is the village paying for these? And why can't we, you know, default these fees to the homeowner? If that's the case, just like with the pool.
We usually do. We try to put those off onto the homeowner.
Okay, but you know, I saw the expenses on there, but how do we, can we now bill them?
Yeah,
Okay. Well, as long as we bill them, we could, and I see the credit on there. I have no problem at all with that, but I'd like to see the billing and the credit.
I know you mentioned also the attorney fees related to the pool, which are on Mr. Schuster's statement.
Yes,
And, you know, there's 5 or 6 entries.
quite a few of them.
Yeah,
there's roughly $1,200 in his bill this month on code only.
right.
Yes.
And
So I
then-
mean, that's half his bill.
Right.
It's covered.
And a lot of that's related to the pool.
Yes.
situation.
Not a lot.
So,
They were, but they were
well-
200, they were 114, 114, 142.
But I
There's
was
a lot
also
there.
saying that, I know you recently just talked about the engineering costs related to certain things. Are we also saying then the attorney fees related to the pool situation would also be part of that?
What, that's what he's saying.
Yeah,
Any-
correct,
any
Yeah,
attorney-
correct. I don't
Or
disagree with what
engineer
you're saying,
fees.
yeah. Because they are fees that were created because of something that was initiated by a resident, which was extenuating circumstances to some degree that involved legal and also engineering extra things, which isn't in a permit, because a permit is just for the permit to do. So ICCI goes out and does the inspection. When we have this overrun of expenses related to things, I would agree with you that that portion of those monies should be reimbursed to the village from the location, the resident in that situation, and look at those things to say, okay, these are the total, you know, what, how do we handle that?
One thing I will warn you, be careful going down this path. Because we did have a situation at one point some years back that we looked at this in regards to the utility companies. You're constantly seeing ComEd and Nicor and Comcast submitting applications. And look at the bills that we get from the engineers on those. They're not $95. they're up there in a couple $100. We cannot go back and collect that money from them.
And we started doing that
We
because we were having issues with
tried to
them.
do that,
Right,
and they stood right up and said, we will see you in court.
and that was a state law, right?
Yep.
And we also, as
That's,
part of that, we used to just, the village clerk would just give it to us, we pass it, and we had multiple issues with things not being in easements, things not being correct, issues. I mean, Jeff has found numerous issues, drainage issues and otherwise, so it's probably,
yeah.
once again, we spend money to
We
save
can
money.
go after Mr.
Yeah.
Littleman and tell him he owes us $1,800 for the litigation we had. We can go after the other 6 or 7 residents also. And see if the courts will give us reimbursement. But you end up with the situation. We've got another resident that we took to court on code violation that is not paying the fine. And we were in court with that gentleman for the better part of 4 years.
And what were our legal fees on that, just so?
I don't even
It was
want to.
considerable.
Is it one that we could put a lien on his facility, his house? Do we have a lien on it?
I don't know what you're gonna do with a court judgment. I know we'll go back to court,
Well, I mean, if you
but
can put a lien on it, And
at
then-
this point, it's back into the court because he hasn't fulfilled the obligations that
Right.
were imposed on him by the court. But I said, this is what we get. Everybody comes in here and they complain about their neighbor doing this or doing that. And they want us to straighten them out. But we're supposed to go over there with the hammer and bang them on the head to the tune of, $5,000 or $6,000 to get them to turn off their light or paint their window or whatever it is.
but we're
And then
looking
we have
at,
to-
and I
then
didn't
we
bring
come
any,
on.
the one I
And,
brought up was,
and everybody else just goes right ahead and ignores us.
and I say with the pool, I'm still adamant, go,
Yeah.
let's bill them. And then with these that were voluntary ones, and they were doing a driveway, they were doing this, and it was strictly their residency. It was their driveway and all that. And we had, Heinz go out and do whatever for Barbara. If that's the case, then I'm sorry, then we incurred the expense. I mean, we incurred it. They're doing a home improvement or they're improving their facility. Then I think we have every right to ask for it. And forget about the past or excuses in the past. Let's move forward and see where we go with it.
But some of that might be in the village easement that we had talked about, the village is responsible. for.
I understand that. The village is.
Right.
In a
I'm fine with that.
situation, or any other situation that is a deck, let's say.
We covered the water,
That's
the
part of their.
water valves and all that.
You take it case by case.
Yeah, we do it case by case, and if you got something that's flagrant, like we had that pool, and there's another pool I heard about, then, the bottom line is, we gotta change, to recoup some of our costs. We just can't keep giving money away.
We take on, we can't afford to pay for.
That's what I was gonna go with.
I
because-
agree.
Right, that,
I agree in principle with
Yeah.
what you're saying, but if I have to spend $10,000 to make 5.
right,
I'm
Ten
fine.
thousand to make.
We
one.
understand
Right,
that,
to
but,
make one.
but do we know that's gonna
So,
happen?
It's
It's gonna happen.
it's a tough situation.
correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but there's a cost to going to court and getting
I'm aware of
a
that.
judgment, and it's only good for what, 7 years? Then you gotta go back again, and somebody's gotta keep track of all that. It's, it's, I mean,
But if
some
we-
of this is much like, you have
We.
a police call
prefer them
for some reason.
comply with this.
Right.
Okay, but I guess, and maybe I'm still new to this, but as I look at this, and I understand, but to me, this is excuses. I know it isn't, but to me, it sounds like excuses, and we won't know till we try, and I say,
We'll come after you. And we'll let you let us know what it's like.
if I'm wrong, I'm at fault, then, okay, fine. If I've done
So
something,
That's not the way most people do.
well, I'm sorry then.
We've had trustees ignore building permits. I mean, people sitting on this board
Mhm.
ignore building, not anybody here right now. Yeah, and then what do you, how do you,
Right,
So that's where, I mean,
yeah.
that's my final say, but I probably won't drop it till I'm gone, but I mean, that's just a matter as I go through and I look at the expenses. And I can forgive some, I can, look at others and I said, wait, this is ridiculous. Why is the village?
Okay, well, you did bring up a question last time about people in the sewer district and us paying for their pumping equipment. and
Get a
station.
$5,400 or whatever expense.
$5,700, right. That goes on only to those people in the sewer district who are on sewer. They were assessed in a special service assessment for that sewer system
40 years ago?
25, 30 years ago.
Right, but they're still paying for it. It only comes out of that, it's restricted fund.
It comes out of that fund, but what I'm saying, George, is the agreement that we made with that thing, and I've not talked to Schuster. I'm not called him to ask him a nickel yet. I just looked into it. Special service assessment area has to be established by a municipal taxing jurisdiction by a binding referendum. And to get these people to vote for that SSA, the village made an agreement with them that we would install, own, and maintain that equipment.
Forever.
That's the way it reads.
Well, you should say,
Now-
it's these, once again,
It's,
maybe that's
I
not
say
good.
we, the people in the sewer,
Just
system,
sort of, it's all,
only those
How many homes are in the sewer district?
165 or so.
yeah. Are the apartments in it yet?
We're trying.
We're trying.
I know, yeah, so right, Eugene,
Yeah.
that money, it
That-
never crosses.
It never
lines, but-
crosses into general fund, it stays in sewer. But that was the agreement that had to be made at that time.
And it's,
If you want, we can get the attorney and see what statutes we would have to go through to revoke that and go back to these people and tell them that we're no longer gonna uphold the end of the bargain.
and.
But you said they're still paying on it.
Well, it's, the people in the service district have paid off the bond that SSA was established for. Okay, but they still have the sewer system that we put in and we own and maintain. And they still pay for that. We have a demand charge on that. And then we have a usage charge, just like your water bill. They get a monthly demand fee and then they get a usage fee. And the usage fee is based off their water bill.
The same thing for people in the
So
water. We
basically,
have
they're
some-
paying twice for the water that goes in the house.
But if anything has to be repaired or replaced,
It's
the village is responsible.
from,
No,
from the
it's this-
electrical panel to the pump station.
You say village, it's not the village, it's the sewer district. There's a there's a restricted fund for the sewer district, there's a restricted fund for the water district. So the same thing is that residents that are on a well
Don't
don't pay a
thing.
dime, a tax or stickers or anything toward anything in the water district. Same thing applies to the customers in the sewer district. That's all, that sewer bill, and it's separated on the water bill as just sewer. So it's basic insurance. You're paying $50-some a month for the sewage treatment and to maintain the system.
The $5,400 bill is getting paid by that homeowner with every single bill
Right.
that we issue them.
So if they've got a fund, they got a fund, it's being taken out of that fund.
It's taken out of that fund. So they're paying us extra. And then when the bill comes in, we take it out of that extra money that they've been paying us all along.
So we're not gonna see an offsetting credit for the $5,400.
No,
No, you're gonna see
Matter of
the
fact-
bills coming.
Matter of fact,
The
I believe,
invoices are gonna be paid every month. Everybody's paying, a portion.
and I don't think the sewer fund is
Eventually,
very good
somewhere
now.
down the line, they'll get their $5,700 back.
And that $50 a month or whatever it is comes to the village, we get it.
It
it comes to the sewer fund.
The village's sewer fund. You gotta remember, there's actually three businesses we're operating here. The village,
Right.
the water department,
Mhm.
and the sewer department.
The.
So the money that comes from the sewer department stays in the sewer department.
Right, I'm aware of that.
So, but yeah, we can't call it the village.
Matter of fact, is some of Kyle and Dylan's, and I believe all of Wendy's sales comes out of sewer and water. So there's a percentage of, and I believe Jeff Seiler spent a great deal of time trying to figure out what that breakup is, and I can't, you probably know better than I do right now. So even part of his salary is paid for sewer and part of his salary is paid out of water.
Right, so the water and the sewer are operated as separate businesses. They're just like they're like ComEd. That we just happen to be the ones that are administering it. So village funds do not go into that. It's all self-supporting.
And then we will pull from those funds to pay for that $5,400.
Yes,
It's the only thing you can do. The village cannot legally give any.
Would have made it a lot easier if I knew that last month or last meeting, but I didn't know that.
yeah.
Okay,
Like I said,
so what are the next steps then for the other, like the pool and stuff like that that we had?
we can talk about adding on that, any outside expenses incurred by the village will be passed on to the permit applicant.
I believe I spoke to ICCI and they are going to be revising their fee schedules and we can look at that as part of the revised fee schedule.
And that fee would come
ensuring-
directly to the village, correct, Barbara?
Well, it would come to the village, but it would pass through the village.
We collect it and pay it out.
And currently your ordinance allows for any costs incurred for consultants, whether it's legal, engineering. Can be billed to it's right in,
Back to the resident, you mean?
back to whoever the applicant is or. whoever
Okay,
needs
so we
the-
got it there.
Problem is getting the applicant to pay.
Right.
And that's
I mean,
been one of the
Then you
issues.
deny the permit.
Well,
So what we have to do is we have to collect the fee up front before we anticipate the need.
Could you do it as a deposit?
there you go.
That's what we've been talking about.
Okay, then you do it as a deposit, so that way.
Everything will have a $500 deposit.
I
And
think
then
good.
when you come in, you want a hot water tank, it's a $500 deposit. You get the final inspection, then you get your $100. We take $100 for your permit and you get $400 back.
Follow me.
Believe it or not, there
And
is
if we have
a,
any problems with any pickup back, then we hold back on some.
I have been surprised the number of residents that don't get final inspections get closed out, the number of residents that are doing major work that they should know better. That aren't getting inspection, that aren't getting permits, the amount of work that goes on weekends so. That would be especially for the finals, that's always, I've just been surprised at how many people don't get final inspections. Which is kind of a pointless exercise for. us.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah, so,
It's there.
but yeah, I like that idea a lot.
You got a new roof this past year. Well, I'll give you a discount if you can show me the inspection.
Okay, so wait, just as a final, I want to follow up. We'll talk any more about it, but I just want to see that the village gets some reimbursement for expenses we're paying. It's as simple as that. So does that come under like Anthony's guys, his umbrella or what?
Well,
For
that
permits
should
and
come
stuff?
up in the next 8 weeks or so when we start working on the budget. We want to start changing things. Then we want to start with the budget and with the ordinances that we've got.
And don't we have that list of fees or what do we call the list of fees nowadays?
Yeah, ancillary.
Ancillary fees, that would be a perfect spot for that, so that way we don't have to pay to put it in the code book. An ordinance each time.
Where is that list of ancillary fees?
I've got a copy of it.
You've got, can I get a copy?
Yeah.
When you get a chance? Thank you.
Actually,
All right. I'm done.
Actually, it was 2 months ago,
Okay.
Eugene, wasn't it just a packet last month or month before you sent it out?
Something like that.
Yeah, it was just an packet.
It's early
Okay.
recently.
Yeah, probably last month.
Okay. George is yielding. the floor. He yields back. Okay, thank you, George. Water and sewer, Mr. Nemeth.
We were having a meeting with trustee Harney, Eugene, Jeff Steele and myself on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, is it now finally? Is that what finally? To discuss the water projects, just make sure it's moving forward, so since we got it kind of early, we got one question, we have. I won't go into too much detail, but they're at the end, a few years ago. At the end of Walnut Drive, the fire department did an inspection and they informed Kyle that there was not enough pressure or volume on the fire hydrants up there to fight a fire. Attorney Schuster said as long as we're moving forward to correct that, we shouldn't have too much liability, but we have to keep on moving forward. The village engineer recommended we connect Walnut and Acorn, which required 4 utility easements to go through there for basically the most practical and cheapest way, the way that would so. We've sent out 2 letters, had maybe, I think, Eugene, one response, one person talked to me, and then Jeff Steele went to go talk to them, maybe 2 responses.
Yeah.
The question is how, and once again, it's expensive, and I think he does in the past, if you're not going eminent domain to get a utility easement. It's expensive and time consuming at Goodwill. The question is how, knowing that there's some liability to the village if we don't keep move forward on this project, and we've been informed by the fire department that it's insufficient. How aggressive do we want to get on this, and any suggestions how we move forward, so. I just open it up for discussion.
Your legal balance is the one that's suffering this year, Joe.
Well, yeah, no, this is 2 or 3 years in the future. Jeff's doing the engineering, for it, so we can, as he said, we can do this, once it's engineered. It's part of the money, so it's engineered, we don't have to include it in the bid. So we got, as long as we're moving forward, we got, 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, years, it's a relatively small project,
Yeah,
so
but
it's.
you better start, I would say, if they've not responded to just general correspondence from the village, then we send one from the attorney
Okay,
and drop the hammer on that way. It's gonna cost us a couple $100, but
we can wait till next, I mean, as I said, we can wait till next fiscal year since we don't have to, because it's,
put it in a note and be sure that it's picked up in the budget going forward.
I'll make sure I talk to next water trustee.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I have, then, any questions?
All right. Come on, somebody's gotta have a question for Joe. First time.
Come on, please.
This is only the second time back. Joe, did you wear that sweater up north too?
I did. It's my dog walking sweater on the beach in the morning.
All right, thank you, Joe. Police and Public Safety, Mr. Diatley,
No report tonight.
sir. Oh, Building and Environment, Mr. Thorne.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mark. Building and Zoning, Mr. Moreno.
Couple things. Piggybacking off what George said. So we had the meeting, I'm gonna read my note, but I didn't want to miss anything. We did have a meeting on Friday with the chief, George Hoffman, Jeff Fleck, code enforcer, Barb Detmer from ICCI, Eugene, and myself. We discussed code enforcement particularly regarding trailers in the village. Trailers are defined to carry boats, snowmobiles, and utility trailers. This is just kind of a future heads up to everyone. P&Z committee with the building department rep Barb Detmer will be reviewing signing ordinances in the B1 business district regarding things such as fly banners and monument signs and storefront signing. There have been issues over the years of rewriting and updating that aspect in the code book. In particular, in Title 8, which is zoning, Chapter 3 is residential district. Article A is R1 residential district. The entire code book is available online. It's on our village website. The residents can access it. It's pretty well defined. It's somewhat easy to navigate once you're in the code book. To read, it's very word intensive, but in particular, this is the one area where and then in 8-3A-3, which is additional uses, boats, RVs, snowmobiles, horse trailers, and trucks with snow plows. The information in this chapter is being reviewed by the P&Z to recommend moving this type of activity out of the Title 8 and create it into a parking ordinance. Again, moving forward, this isn't happening, this year, but this is some of the steps we're trying to take. Planning and zoning would also have to conduct public hearings regarding moving this out. So, for example, it theoretically could be where trailers would not be allowed in the village of Sleepy Hollow. It would fall under a parking regulation that then would be enforced by Sleepy Hollow Police Department. The P&Z at the public hearing would submit finding of facts. They would submit a recommendation to the village board, and the village board then would take action based on the recommendation from planning and zoning. These possible changes could potentially be looked at for next fiscal year, which would be May 1st of 2023. The chief did attend our meeting as well, and at the time that, in the next few months, in the beginning of 2023, any ordinance or any parking regulations that would be so written based on P and Z's review, would be, in conjunction with the chief and the police department to make sure that it's specific and accurate in what it's asking for. One of the reasons this all came up was from our last meeting, talking about boats and yards, large boats and yards. The code enforcer, Jeff Fleck, not permitted to walk onto property. But how can you tell if a boat is more than 20 feet or a trailer sitting on the driveway for an extended period of time? We also recognize that all of this encompasses a resident having a boat or a trailer or a snowmobile that they may have to prepare and get ready with material from their home, supplies as they begin to go on their journey, in a couple of days. So, with all this as it comes together, there will definitely be opportunity for, say it's a 2-day thing to be on your driveway or a 3-day thing on your driveway. We also talked about allowing a resident to notify the police department to say, hey, I am going to be doing this trip on such and such a date. I may need an extra day or two. So it's an awareness. And it really comes down to ultimately to compliance, so that in driving through the village, we're all seeing, well, in driving through the village, we're not seeing things that we recognize are there that shouldn't be there because they're part of a code and it's hard to enforce. And by removing this from the code book area, it allows us to be a little more, it allows residents to understand the program, allows the village to be a little more, can take a little more action in reducing this, these items that exist out there. And so I'm bringing it up to the attention of the board because that was kind of the results, kind of the recap from our meeting. And knowing that these things are in the process of being looked at, but as time progresses, we're looking to make some additional changes to make it easier for everyone to enjoy where they live, basically. And then just on a side note, I know Kyle and Public Works aren't here tonight, but I just wanted to thank Kyle and Public Works because they did cut down the dead tree that was in the median space on Stevens Court, which was leaning like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and it was dead as a doornail, and actually it lives now in the burn pile, so I'll be clapping on that night when I see it. As long as we get not moisture like we had last year, where the burn pile didn't light for 3 days, hopefully this year it won't not have any rain. So that's what I have for my report, and then you'll hear from me briefly for the old business ordinance.
Question for you, Anthony.
Yes,
I had a
sir.
resident ask me the other day, and I emailed you, but it was almost today. On Willow, 1815 Elm, looks like there was a fire at the house and it's kind of blighted. It doesn't look like much has been done there. Do you know what
They're under permit.
that's not the project?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure that
Crime scene still?
moving forward.
What is it? Still a crime scene?
No, it's not a crime scene. They've applied for permit.
Oh.
It's under review. So hopefully,
Okay.
they had challenges with the insurance company, as many residents do.
Yeah, I know that, Serve Pros out there immediately and really did a
Yeah.
pretty good job, but that's pretty extensive.
Yeah, I think the resident just making sure that it's moving forward, that somebody wasn't just ignoring it or. it
Oh,
wasn't-
it's not being ignored. I
Thank you.
spent about 4 hours on that job site at no charge.
Thank you for that. Once again, thank you.
You're welcome.
And also want to thank Barb Detmer and ICCI for the reimbursement for the work that you did on chapter 6.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Moving on to old business. Ordinance 2022-11, an ordinance amending the regulation governing registration of motor vehicles and trailers in the village.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 2022-11, amending the regulations governing the restriction of motor vehicles and trailers in the village.
Second.
Moved by Crane, seconded by Thorne to approve ordinance 2022-11. Any comments, questions, or discussion?
Didn't we vote to take both of the discounts out?
So,
what I wanted. to know.
Yeah, that's it,
So-
so.
so this ordinance that you see before you in section F and section G. Section F being persons who are or will be over 65 years of age as the due date for registration shall be allowed a discount of 25% of the amount of the fee otherwise due for up to 2 vehicles. And letter G, persons who are or will be on active military duty status as of the due date for registration shall be allowed a discount equal to 25% of the amount of the fee due for each license. These were added back in.
These were taken out.
Yeah, why were they added back in?
Why are they added
Because
back in?
because when we were talking about the other day in our conversation with discounts. This was the 25% was in there originally. We had done a motion some meetings ago to remove the military due discount. And there was conversation with our group that if we're accounting for 65 years of age, and we also need to account for active military residents. This also comes into the fact of we don't on the village stickers and the different stickers for the card. This goes towards a lot of this is administration costs, but this also goes towards any monies gained from this goes towards roads. So because we had tabled it or postponed it at the last meeting, because if you remember the last meeting, this said 10%. And we knew that 10% is what we originally had. And then we talked a couple meetings ago about doing the 25% for the 2 cars. So that's why this now became a revised, an updated.
Sorry, foul. You cannot change something without bringing, it was approved by the board to be presented with the changes that were made at the last meeting. You cannot, in the meantime, revise that and bring it to the board. We
Okay,
have to follow the directions that were set out at the last meeting to change ordinance 2022-11. And that had 2 amendments to it, and it was to strike F and G. So 2022-11 coming back to this board does not have F and G in it. If you would like to approve 2022-11, you can make an amendment to approve it and add this language back.
Okay,
But I would say,
But
can we just,
this has to be a board decision.
can we table this next meeting and look at it that way and do this?
well,
I would move to lay on the table to the next meeting when the attorney's here and have it presented like that, so it's in the packet like that, and then we can discuss it from there with my motion.
I want to know if F and G is staying out of here. He wants to put it in. It's supposed
well,
to
that's
be
what I'm
out.
saying, if this time right now is our discussion period. In order to,
This just had the bad feeling with it in the packet like this after it's already been removed and put back in the packet, so I would like it to be
Well,
done by
it's been
parliamentary
directed by
procedure.
the board to be revised, and then it's been revised opposite of what the board.
That's what I'm saying, so
That's not, it's not cricket.
no, that's what I'm saying, so I would like the table, have it presented correctly,
and what would
made the
you-
motion, and then the board, it was voted on to be those struck, so it should be presented like that in the packet with those lines not even in there. Motion be made to approve it, and then as we did last time, it could be amended to add a discount or anything we want to put into it would be the correct way. It would be a more, I don't want to say correct, but that would be the
That's the proper procedure.
proper
right, but
procedure.
at the time, a meeting ago, when we had this in front of us. The 2 meetings
There's actually
ago,
a
we had
motion.
the 25% in there.
Point,
And at
point
the
of
last
order.
meeting, we had,
There was a motion on the table looking for a second, so do we get a second on the motion to
He did.
table, not to table it to the late table to
You want to postpone it?
postpone it to the next meeting?
Can it be
Open
reviewed
that
at the
conversation.
next meeting? Because I think at that last meeting, if I'm correct, it was kind of a spur of the moment.
Joe wants to make a motion to postpone this until November 7th.
Looking for a second.
He's looking for a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by our, okay, we've got an amendment to the motion. No,
No,
it's a free, it's
it's a
an
straight
open,
motion, yeah.
straight motion to postpone this to November 7th. Okay. Who's the second? Joe, or George. Joe made the motion, George seconded it. So on the question of postponing till November 7th, any further comments, questions, or discussion?
So my comments, my discussion would be, can we talk about what we want to see in it at that time?
You
To
can-
eliminate,
You can come back at the next meeting.
but we
what you-
can't do it now.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no, yeah. Okay, on the motion to table to November 7th, no further comments, questions, or discussion. I'm gonna call a roll call on this one, just to be sure everybody's.
So you want me to call a roll?
I want you to call a roll vote on this.
A little subtle there, but I wanted to make sure. Mr. Harney, Mr. Dadley, Mr. Prano,
Nay,
I'm sorry,
nay,
Mr. Thorne.
Aye.
Mr. Hoffman,
Aye.
Mr. Nimitz.
Aye.
5 affirmative and 1 negative, the motion to postpone to November 7th passes.
what about the original motion that we're still talking about that?
We just got postponed. We postponed the discussion on ending this until the 7th.
So Steve, can you make sure that this gets in the packet next time on the agenda the way it's wherever we're at in the whole thing right now?
Well, if it gets put on the docket for the next menu, it's gonna be, it'll be subject to change.
Right, oh, it's always subject to
Okay,
change, right,
yeah.
but it's not as the way,
Right.
with not on what we
Correct.
voted
Yeah,
past, so.
it's not proper to change it.
Yes, I
backward and
understand
bring it out later.
But if you also remember, the last piece of paper we had said 10%, and we had talked about 25% prior to the paper coming to 10%. That's why we postponed it 2 weeks ago.
No, we postponed it 2 weeks ago because Joe wanted to kick G out.
Yeah.
Earlier, we kicked F. out.
Yes, but F was,
And earlier,
said
you
10%.
changed G to another percentage is what you're saying.
we changed F to another.
I'm certain,
Yeah,
Tony,
G we had knocked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tony can look back in the minutes and adjust it accordingly, right, Tony?
We can all go back to-
Come on, Tony, smile a little bit.
What could go wrong?
Okay, we've got that table to November 7th. It's a good thing we started on this before the stickers would do. Oh, okay, any other old business come before the board? Any new business to come before the board? No new business come before the board?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it, we are adjourned till November 7th. Remember, Halloween, Saturday, October 29th.
See you.
Open for everybody.